All right, so anyways, this is going to be Nicole, Kevin, and Tim, and they're going to be speaking surveillance on the silver screen. I know, it's kind of like, let's give them a big hand. Come on. Louder. Awesome. Thank you.
Fabulous introduction. Thank you. Sorry about that. So thank you all for coming, particularly Saturday night at 6 p.m. This is going to be a super fun panel, great night to talk about surveillance on the silver screen with two of my favorite folks to talk about these issues with. On the end is Kevin Bankston, who is at the New America Foundation. You may have known him from previous starring roles at CDT, working on free expression, and at EFF for almost a decade, working on privacy, free speech, and new technology. And Kevin was also the lead counsel in AFF's cases against the NSA post-2005 revelations. And Tim Edgar, who is currently at Brown and an adjunct professor at law at Georgetown University. Tim is going to bring a great perspective to tonight's panel because he actually worked in the belly of the beast for a couple of years, both with Obama on national security issues and as the first deputy for civil liberties for the director of national intelligence from 2006 to 2009. So we can pause for a moment and think about a couple of things that may have happened related to surveillance between 2006 and 2009. So we have plied him with beer, and hopefully he will be loose-lipped during the panel. Or maybe
there are no more secrets, unfortunately, to spill.
Or maybe later on at parties. And I'm Nicole Lozer. I'm the Technology and Civil Liberties Director for the ACLU in California. I actually first developed this presentation almost a decade ago when some of the first revelations were coming out about the NSA. And Kevin and I did this presentation at DEF CON about 5 years ago where several of the issues in here we thought were still fiction. But post-Snowden, we've realized even more of it is fact. So we're going to have a fun time tonight sort of going through some of these clips and talking about what's fact, what's fiction, what's legal, and hopefully having some nice conversation and debate about the issues. And we have a pretty short time frame tonight, but we do hope we'll be able to take a few questions at the end or come up afterwards, and we'll be happy to talk. So we're going to start it off with our first clip. You may recognize the people in this movie.
I don't know if you guys should be talking so loud. No, Lisa, it's not like the government is listening to everybody's conversation.
Hi, I'm calling about your meat lovers pizza. I like meat, but I don't know if I'm ready to love again. You hang up first.
Oh, you hang up first.
Okay.
She hung up on me.
But we're fugitives. We should just lay low till we get to Seattle.
Hey, everybody, I found one. The government actually found someone we're looking for. Yeah, baby, yeah.
I do love that clip. So this clip is a fun way to start things because it illustrates where we were just a few years ago. I think this was 2008, 2009 maybe. Post revelations of the Bush era warrantless wiretapping program, but pre-Snowden. And even then, I think in pop culture and real culture, there was concern and anxiety about the breadth of the NSA's abilities, and also questions about its effectiveness. Like, you're collecting all of this hay. How many needles are you actually finding in the hay? And that's actually been a really critical question post-Snowden as well. To pimp the work of my own organization, the New America Foundation, we recently released a couple of papers, one at the beginning of the year about the effectiveness or lack thereof of the programs, especially the bulk records collection of phone records, where basically the government, when it started with a big inflated number of how many cases the phone collection had helped. It's basically been limited down to one case where they convicted a cab driver in San Diego for donating less than $10,000 to a Somali terror group. So the question is, like, is it worth collecting all of our phone records for that conviction? But also last week, we released a paper. You know, if you're going to talk about the purported benefits of the programs, what about all the costs of the programs, not just to privacy and civil liberties? And so we just released a paper at our Open Technology Institute in New America all about the costs of the NSA programs. Thank you. Not only like the direct impact on the U.S. internet industry. Oh goodness.
Oh my goodness.
Oh goodness gracious.
I believe.
I thought y'all were applauding my paper. So it's like, whoa.
All right.
Oh, thank you, Joe.
Well, this is good.
Wait, am I really doing this many?
Yes.
What is the audience having one too?
No, you guys are.
Drink if you got them.
This is very sweet.
Now I'm spilling shit on your paper.
See
I'm
how
sorry.
many more revelations there will be tonight. You're already drinking beer.
Yeah.
And we didn't
Hey,
even do
when I drink my writing
HTTPS by
proofs.
default.
You
We
don't
get
drink
whiskey.
yet. Who's a new speaker in this room right now? Did you hear me? First time speaker?
Yes.
Tim Edgar.
That would be me. First time speaker.
Yes.
Round of applause, please.
Okay, now I'm ready.
All right. Cheers.
All right, cheers.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Anyway, read our paper.
Oh, you want? I'll grab the rest. There we go.
Oh, goodness. No, so not just the cost to American internet industry and trust in the industry, but also cost to our foreign relations, cost to the security of the internet itself, which I think is really important and not being talked enough about. But let's look at the next clip.
Oh, and I wanted to just say one other important piece in that clip is that it's not just at the NSA, but we see in that clip local surveillance being rolled out in the buses, and we've seen billions of dollars come down into local and state surveillance. So sort of see that conflation of issues. All right, next, for those who are familiar with this film, the third in Bourne.
I have a hit on Echelon, Blackbriar, Blackbriar. Looks like it's coming from a European signal. NSA, please confirm you receive.
Sir, what you got? We intercepted a call in London. Keyword Blackbriar. Okay, send it to New York right away.
Track the film, registered to a London reporter named Simon Ross, works at the Guardian newspaper. You're tracking it? Sorry. Yeah, thanks, Mike. We have a survey team covering him at work and a sneaky peeks on their way to his apartment. Who talked to him? How did you find out about the Blackbriar? I don't know. We pulled his background and run a cross-check on any known anomalies. We've come up with nothing, but I think if we follow Ross, we can be able to...
Ross is easy. We want the source.
The Bourne Supremacy, third in the Bourne trilogy. As a civil libertarian, this movie was like cinematic crack to me, because within the space of like a couple of minutes, this minute included, they mentioned rendition, or otherwise state-sponsored kidnapping and torture, sneak and peek searches under the USA Patriot Act, tracking cell phones, and Echelon. How many people in this room know what Echelon is? And that's why I love DEF CON. Echelon is the program, part of a partnership of the US and the UK and Australia and New Zealand and Canada, where basically their intelligence services suck up every radio signal on the planet. It's been going on basically for decades. What's changed in the past 15 years or so is much of our international communications and therefore these the intelligence community's capabilities have transitioned to the wire, to the fiber network. And so that means here in the US, the NSA sitting on our domestic backbone network, prior to 2008, primarily under the president's own authority, that's what we were talked about as the warrantless wiretapping program, since then under a law called the FISA Amendments Act, and particularly section 702 of that. And so PRISM is what you've heard of as 702 surveillance of cloud companies, sending them targets and getting stuff back from the companies. But there's also, and that's called downstream collection, but there's also the upstream, which is them sitting on the network, which we really have known about since 2005, 2006, based on news reports and whistleblower Mark Klein from AT&T, the secret room in San Francisco that was part of the basis of EFF's lawsuits in this area. But we've learned so much more post-Snowden, including about how the government picks these things called selectors, which are things that identify their targets, and those get tasked to the machines that are sitting on the network, and they get fed back the data that they want. And so here, the selector was Blackbriar, the code name for a program that trains assassins like Matt Bourne? Jason Bourne. Jason Bourne. It's been a while. And so this is not fiction. This is a capability that they have. Right now, they are saying that the selectors that they use for upstream are just addresses and phone numbers. So they'll pull everything that is to or from a target or that mentions a target selector. But they say they are not using keywords in the country under 702. There's also surveillance outside the country that's done only under the president's authority, without oversight by Congress, without oversight by the FISA court, under something called EO 12333, Executive Order 12333. And so if you've heard about them cracking into Google and Yahoo's data links, or sniffing a bunch of address books, or sniffing a bunch of webcam photos outside of the country, that's when and how they're doing it. And we don't know if they're doing this kind of keyword-based searching outside of the country. They very well might. But they say they're not doing it inside the country under 702. And of course, the Director of National Intelligence never lies.
And just a fun little fact and fiction there. I don't know how many people caught it, but it's picking up information from a Guardian reporter, which is pretty precedent with the Snowden issues. So with all the vast powers that the NSA has been gobbling up and the data that they've been pulling together, what could happen? I'm sure they wouldn't do anything wrong in those issues. Here we've got an oldie but goodie from the movie Brazil.
I need some information on a woman named Lake Alcott. Yes. I know her age and distinguishing marks, but I need an address or a place of work. It's your dream girl, isn't it? Well, maybe it's to consult. Oh, there's a woman involved. There's no stopping me. That's it.
So I'm sure that the NSA wouldn't be using its powers to look for love interests. And I'm sure that there would also never be any mistakes.
Ministry of Information, Deputy Minister Eugene Holman.
Good evening, David.
What do you believe is behind this recent increase in terrorist bombings?
Bad sportsmanship. A ruthless minority of people seems to have forgotten certain good old-fashioned virtues. They just can't stand seeing the other fellow win. If these people would just play the game, they'd get a lot more out of life.
Nevertheless, Mr. Holman, there are those who maintain that the Ministry of Information has become too large and unwieldy.
David, in a free society, information is the name of the game. You can't win the game if you've got a bad shot.
And the cost of it all, Deputy Minister, 7% of the gross national product.
I understand this concern on behalf of the taxpayer. People want value for money. And that's why we always insist on the principle of information retrieval charging. It's absolutely right and fair that those found guilty should pay for their periods of detention and for the information retrieval procedures used in their interrogation.
Do you believe that the government is winning the battle against terrorists?
Arm around for time. We're fielding all their strokes, running a lot of them out, and pretty consistently knocking them for six. I'd say they're nearly out of the game. All ideas have to subsidize.
But Mr. Holman, the bombing campaign is now in its 13th year.
Beginner's luck.
So Tim, with all the billions of dollars, there's no misuse ever happening within the system or any mistakes, right?
Right. So actually, this brings me back to my days inside the belly of the beast, doing oversight on compliance issues at the NSA. It's a very realistic depiction of the kind of compliance issues that we had to address. The technology was only slightly more obsolete than this technology. So there were two types of compliance issues depicted in these two clips, and we encountered both of them. The first one was what we would call an intentional violation. This is when you used the surveillance apparatus for purposes that would not be considered foreign intelligence, like I'm interested in this woman. Turns out is not a requirement under the National Intelligence Priorities Framework, and therefore is not a valid foreign intelligence target, and can get you in trouble if you are discovered through our compliance system. There were a relative handful of intentional compliance violations that were uncovered over about 10 years, about 12 of them, and all of them, I believe, involved love interests, which perhaps isn't that surprising given human nature. The term was lovint, like SIGINT or HUMINT. This was lovint, and it's not authorized. The second one is a screw-up. This happened relatively more often. When you put in the wrong IP address, or the wrong phone number, or the wrong email address, and you collect information on somebody who is completely innocent because you just put in the wrong numbers. And those were also captured and reported. There's a third type that's not depicted in these clips, which are systemic violations. That's when you screw up the entire way in which you conduct the surveillance, and then you collect a lot of information beyond just the fly landing in your computer. No, you actually set the computer up system up, which was the one that I was actually most concerned about. The one thing I would say in defense of the government here is that if you have a system that is detecting these violations and reporting them to Congress and the FISA court, and it is in fact detecting violations and you're reporting them, that is far better than a system in which you say, we don't have any violations. I was always much more suspicious of any program where the compliance record was 100%. Than I was of a program that said, hey, we had some pretty big problems setting it up, and then there were violations, and then we reported them, and there were a couple of intentional misuses. That means that you're actually measuring your violations, and that's a good thing.
So then that really sets up our next clip. When you have immense power, what kind of...
Before you start, I just wanted to flag, for those who have not seen Brazil, what happened to Mr. Buttle.
Yeah.
Mr. Buttle was rendered and tortured into death. So that's what happened as a result of that typo, as an innocent man was kidnapped by his government and tortured to death.
So I am not going to say that that sort of thing never happens, because I think there have been very serious mistakes. But all I would say is that there's an important reason to be careful about what you do with intelligence information, because if it's screwed up, then you're going to have a big problem on your hands. And I think that one of the things the NSA doesn't do is they don't do things. They don't render people. They don't, they pass information along, and it's very important that the other agencies understand that it's not perfect.
But when you have technology that can provide immense power, one of the big questions that has been sort of raging since the Snowden revelations is there proper oversight? Is there proper channels to make sure that laws are being followed and that we actually have laws in place to address issues that need to be addressed? And this next clip does a good job of teeing up some of that from The Dark Knight.
Beautiful, unethical, dangerous. You've turned every cell phone in Gotham into a microphone.
And a high-frequency generator receiver.
You took my sonar concept and applied it to every phone in the city. With half the city feeding you sonar, you can image all of Gotham. This is wrong.
I've got to find this man, Lucius.
At what cost?
The database is now key encrypted. It can only
too much power for one person.
That's why I gave it to you. Only you can use it.
Spying on 30 million people isn't part of my job description.
This is an audio sample. If he talks within range of any phone in the city, you can triangulate his position.
I'll help you this one time. But consider this my resignation. As long as this machine is at Wayne Enterprises, I won't pay.
God bless Morgan Freeman. Really. If only he existed in real life. I mean, you know he does exist in real life, but you know what I mean. The screen Morgan Freeman, who is infallible, if only he existed, but he doesn't. Instead, we have Dianne Feinstein in the FISA court. So I love this clip because it is really one of the most potent and widely seen metaphors for the moral conundrums that our intelligence community has been put into post 9/11. And it illustrates the need for, well, first, the questioning of, should anyone have the ability to spy on 30 million or 300 million or 6 billion people? And if so, under what checks and balances? I also think it's a lot of fun because it's a great mixture of actually plausible technology and really stupid technology. I mean, because like owning your phone and turning on the mic is possible. In fact, we've seen this in law enforcement investigations of the mafia. Like they get a warrant with the provider assistance, they turn on the mic. You know, we've seen, you know, you guys are well aware of malware that you can inject into a phone or a computer to turn on a mic or a camera. You know, there is, you know, they're voice printing for the Joker. You know, this capability does exist. The NSA does have that capability. But I don't think the phone network would actually deal really well with this. I think if you opened every mic on the phone network, it would probably fall over, and at the very least, the company would know that it's happening. So I don't think Bruce would actually get away with this one, which actually brings up a fun bit of trivia. I'm sorry? So yeah, it's a net neutrality violation. Anyway, so this brings up a really great bit of trivia, which is assuming that this is a Wiretap Act violation, and it is. I think that you open a mic on somebody in a place where, in a private space, that's a interception of their oral communication. And if by doing so you also hear their phone conversation, that's an interception of an electronic communication. If they actually if a class action lawyer actually found out about this and sued Bruce Wayne, how much money do you think he'd be on the hook for? Well, if you assume $20, if you assume 30 million plaintiffs, it's $300 billion because the Wiretap Act has really huge statutory damages, which is why at EFF we brought a case that would have cost the phone companies an enormous amount.
Or they'd be liable for nothing because they'd hire really expensive lobbyists and get immunity, right?
Yes,
yeah.
Which is
boo,
exactly what happened.
Well, I'd like to point out that it is Batman, and maybe they should have immunity just for this one time.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, it's Batman. Like, it's not like he's an emotionally crippled sociopath or anything. But anyway, I think this clip also raises an issue that we're going to talk a bit more about, which is the question of if this system, even though it's spying on 30 million people, is only going to hit when it hears the Joker. Has it really violated all those people's privacy? Or is that targeted enough that it doesn't implicate their privacy interests?
Well, I think it's very critically important.
That issue.
It's very critically important that there are all these screens, because that indicates that each individual phone has some kind of strange thing going on. That maybe if they got rid of the screens, it wouldn't violate privacy.
Yeah. Well, and then the crazy technology is this sonar thing, which I like. Maybe there's some weird mil-spec stuff that's starting to do things like that, but anyway.
And then the next clip that we're going to go into is both surveillance that's happening on the national security stage, but also surveillance that's happening increasingly local law enforcement to surveil many, many people, and that is cell tracking. This is from the company Keep, which was just in 2012. So you can see it.
Where are you?
Honey, you don't need to know that right now.
But why can't you just tell me?
You see, all I want to know is, are you okay?
I can.
Got him. Just off I-94 near Gurnee, Illinois.
Send the coordinates to the field.
I know it won't be long.
Done.
You have a full green light. Still tracking?
Yep.
He's cooked.
He's just so handsome. So this is a pretty straightforward depiction of cell phone tracking, which can be done in a variety of ways, and is routinely done by local law enforcement as well as the feds, as well as the intelligence community. Often done by, with some level of precision, by triangulating your position using cell towers. Or working with the provider to turn on your GPS and track you with your GPS. Or using IMSI catchers, which are basically fake base stations pretending to be your local cell tower that follow you around in vans and triangulate your position that way. It's still very unsettled, even though we've been fighting about it in the courts for nigh on a decade, whether the government needs warrants to do this or can do it under a much easier to get type of court order. We have probably 36 plus lower court decisions on the issue, the majority of them requiring a warrant, but what we hear anecdotally is that most courts will still grant permission to do this without a warrant. And in the meantime, when the government loses in these cases, it chooses not to appeal, so it can avoid higher court opinions that would disagree with its current practice. We have seen higher court opinions on another issue, which is access to stored cell site location information about which tower your phone was pinging that the phone company has in its logs. And there's a circuit split at this point. There was a Fourth Circuit case, well, first there was a Third Circuit case that we litigated at EFF, where the court held that courts can require warrants if they choose to under the statutes that applies here. A Fourth Circuit case that said the Fourth Amendment does not protect this data, and most recently an 11th Circuit case that included the ACLU holding that the Fourth Amendment did protect this data. So it's kind of still the Wild West and very unclear when and how the statutes and the Fourth Amendment protect your location against government tracking.
So I will venture a prediction here that much like gay marriage, the trend here is very clear, that I believe that within just a few years, it will be very clear to everyone that in fact you do need a warrant for this kind of location tracking. That is the best opinion inside the government. It's certainly inside the intelligence community. It's one reason that there was an attempt to limit the kind of data that NSA got to exclude cell phone tracking data because of the Fourth Amendment implications of that kind of domestic data. But it really goes to this whole problem of the courts catching up with technology. I mean, the older technology was less precise. And so some of those older cases may have made a little bit more sense in terms of having a looser standard. But as that technology gets more and more precise, it becomes increasingly clear. And I think it's just unalterably clear right now that you should not be able to do this without a warrant. And but it takes a while for the courts to catch up.
Yeah, I wish DOJ's computer crime and intellectual property section would take that on as the official position, but I agree that that's the trend. I'll just flag that the other problem here is simply that the level of secrecy in regard to this type of legal process has been a real hurdle. I mean, we didn't even know that the government was doing this without warrants until 2005, and they'd been doing it for a long time. And so it's very hard to, you have to shadow box trying to fight these things, and it's quite frustrating. But The fight continues, including in Congress, where there are some proposals to clearly require in statute that you get a warrant when you track a cell phone. Those are not moving quite as quickly as the proposals to make sure that the government gets a warrant before seizing your email, which is a much simpler and easier to message issue and easier to draft statutes.
And for a long time, of course, the government and the telephone companies were very happy to keep it a secret how often location information was being sought and obtained. And Senator Markey, now Senator Markey, 2 years ago, actually sent letters to all the mobile companies urging them, requiring them to respond about how many demands they were getting. That opened up some of the floodgates. And then the ACLU actually did only our second shareholder action ever. Last year, we did a shareholder proposal against Verizon and AT&T to pressure them to release their first transparency reports, which came out in January, and of course revealed what we had long suspected, that these companies were getting hundreds of thousands of demands for location information every year. Like 1 in 10 of them were with a warrant, and so that helps to support not just the legislative efforts to update the law, but also policy efforts, and creates pressure to create change. Because obviously this is incredibly sensitive information. Where you are is what you're doing and who you know, and that kind of thing really needs to be well protected.
One thing, one additional technique or tactic that's worth noting that's actually reflected in AT&T's transparency report. You know, like I don't agree with AT&T on everything. I've sued them before, but like this is something they did good and that they did better than Verizon and the other companies that are transparency reporting at this point, is that they specifically reported on the number of requests they received for cell dumps. A cell dump is when the government asks for records of every phone that pinged a particular tower in a particular period. And the first really prevalent case we heard of this was in the case of the Scarecrow Bandits, a bank robbery gang. And what the government had done is it had gotten cell dumps on all the towers near the banks when they were being robbed, and then mined them to see if there were any phones that were in the location of all the banks at the time of all the robberies. And it turns out that this is actually a very routine technique that is typically done without a warrant, but that necessarily results in the government collecting an enormous amount of information about people who are not, for example, scarecrow bandits. But we haven't yet had a really, intense policy discussion about what the standards should be for that, what, say, the minimization practices should be for the government when that happens. Like, when and how should they get rid of the data that they don't need after the case is done.
And we've also seen cell tower dumps tried to be used in situations that were clearly not bank robbers. There was an effort made to obtain all the cell phones within the location of a planned labor protest. So those are the kinds of things that really get us very concerned about the use of cell tower dumps, particularly without proper and adequate legal process. So we will move on to...
Would it really change the legal framework if instead of getting the full dumps of the people in those areas, they really express the question to the cell phone company, tell us which of your subscribers were here at this time and there at that time? Would it change the legal basis for acquiring those?
It would certainly change my legal analysis, but one of the problems in this area is that the law is just so inadequate in describing what's allowed. Mm-hmm. If you're going to use a standard subpoena, for example, if you're going to say to the company, these are business records that you've created, please give me your business records, that's a fairly straightforward legal tool. To do the much more privacy protective kind of technique that you're describing would obviously be much better from a privacy standpoint, but that requires the legislature, Congress, the ACLU, the police to get together and have a debate and craft a statute that says, okay, so cell tower dumps, maybe for bank robbers, maybe with particular standards, maybe with particular technology will be okay, otherwise they're banned. And this is the kind of debate we simply aren't having in this country, and we need to have it.
And as Tim said, many technology has far outpaced a lot of the laws. A lot of our major privacy laws about electronic information haven't been meaningfully updated since the 1980s. Before the web, before social networking, far before when we were all carrying cell phones. And that's part of the real legislative fight that we're having, both on the federal level to update laws like the Electronic Communications Privacy Act, about laws that are particular to location information, and in states as well, trying to pass laws to update privacy protections for location information. We've had laws passed in Montana, in Texas, in Maine. We had a law that passed with strong bipartisan support in California, but was vetoed by the governor. But we'll be back at it. So, all right. So next clip, because we're going to move along. Minority Report. Tom Cruise in his heyday.
Also hands.
We could just watch the whole movie.
What you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Nobody now giving no rage.
We are now in position and ready to begin thermal scan on all residences on North Powell.
I'm thinking you must really like me, don't you, Fletcher? That's why you asked to partner with me on this little sortie, isn't it?
I think you're swell company, now.
It's not that you don't trust me to be alone with the chief, is it? That you think I might, futz with him if I had the chance?
No, I just want to watch him use your body to sandblast another building, that's all, Jeff. Havana, go.
I show 27 warm bodies.
Roger that, confirm 27 warm bodies. What do you think, 4 spiders, 1 per floor?
Let's do 8. I gotta eat.
Residents of 931 Powell, residents of 931 Powell, this is Officer Fletcher of DC 3 Prime. Under authority of PC Section 64009, we are deploying spiders in interior complex.
Stand still, baby. Open your eyes. All right, totally creepy. So those of us up here would, clearly believe this is unconstitutional. It would be unconstitutional.
Antonin Scalia would believe this is unconstitutional.
Trespass on the home, and as Kevin said, even Scalia would think this is unconstitutional. When the issue of thermal imaging came up in the Kylo case, it was found to be unconstitutional trespass at the home. Scalia was particularly concerned about the fact that it would intrude upon the privacy of the lady of the house taking a bath. So he has sort of very strong feelings about the home and privacy within the home. But one can imagine in this future world that the police may be making the argument, look, we're not intruding upon anyone's privacy. These are devices. We as ourselves, as human beings, didn't actually conduct a search of these people. And it wasn't until these bots found Tom Cruise, the perpetrator, that was indeed a search, and he had no reasonable expectation of privacy because he was the perpetrator, therefore no Fourth Amendment violation. And this seems like kind of a crazy argument that all these people whose privacy was invaded, that were searched, their Fourth Amendment rights were not violated. But we're actually seeing this kind of argument come up in the electronic surveillance context.
Right. So I would agree that even General Alexander would say that it's unconstitutional, but it's only unconstitutional because of the invasion of the home. And what's interesting to me, and we had a long discussion about this before the panel, is when you acquire data, there's a view inside the government, it's been the view for decades now, that is not collected until a person actually looks at it. It's certainly not a popular view in this room or with civil libertarians, but it is in fact the standard view of the government. And the reason for it is essentially the NSA goes around, they vacuum up all sorts of signals all over the world. They don't exactly know what they've got in many cases. They have to take it back to NSA and process it. And they say, hey, we can't be considered to have collected it until we've actually done something to it to make it available to our, to our analysts to look at. And when I was, applying these kinds of rules inside the intelligence community and at the White House, that was the rule. That was the internal rules that we had to deal with. Just because those are the internal policies, though, doesn't mean that it is consistent with the Fourth Amendment. And so you have to analyze that question a little bit differently. One question for all of you is to ask yourself the question, what is the most creepy thing about this clip? Is it the fact that they could find Tom Cruise by extracting this data from the people in the apartment, or was it the fact that they did it in a creepy way? Because what if we didn't need these creepy spiders to be looking at little girls and making them cry? What if we could just extract the data from the Internet of Things that was already in your house, that you voluntarily put there in order to save energy, and we just did it by typing a few keystrokes, on a computer, and extracted it from a server somewhere far away from this apartment building? Well, then we're dealing with a much more murky question, in which whether it's constitutional or not is not really clear to a lot of people.
Yeah. I think this raises a couple of issues. Because there are two threads of thought, two legal arguments that one can imagine that basically count for the proposition that it doesn't count until actually a person looks. First, and this would be if I were trying to figure out how they thought this was legal in the future considering our current case law, is one, the case law would have had to have changed, but two, there is case law about dog sniffs, where the court has held that when a dog sniffs your bag, even though the contents of your bag are private and protected by the Fourth Amendment, that is constitutional because the dog is only going to alert on contraband. And therefore, and you have no legitimate privacy interest in your possession of contraband. And therefore, dog sniffs are constitutional even if not warranted. I think that's a particularly weird conclusion, particularly considering that it is legislatures that decide what counts as contraband. So to have legislatures have the ability to decide what is a constitutional search is kind of weird. But if I had to guess what the legal rationale for this was, it's that, well, this is only going to detect a fugitive, Tom Cruise, and otherwise won't reveal any particulars about the home, and therefore it's constitutional. But then there's also this thread, and this isn't so much in the legal case law, but it is apparent in the way that the government talks about it, is that in terms of privacy violation, in terms of how we define what an intrusion is on your expectation of privacy, what counts as an interception of your communication, they seem to be following rules that imply that, well, it doesn't really count until a person looks at it, or at the very least until we store it. But what we're looking at, and what we've been looking at since we first found out about it in December of 2005, is a network of machines that are sitting on top of our domestic network that the NSA is directly querying with specific targets. And all of our bits are going into those boxes. And they're able to pull what they want from those boxes. And I would say that EFF's position when I worked there, and now is reflected in the motion they just filed in Joule v. NSA, one of their cases against the NSA, is that as soon as your bits go into a box that is tasked by the government, that's a search of those bits, that's a seizure of those bits, and that's a violation of the statutes that regulate interception and electronic surveillance. This is also the same position that I've been working on an academic paper on with another lawyer, Amy Stepanovich, at the organization Access, accessnow.org. And you can Google for that and look at it, and it outlines our arguments. And I think if you read that and you read EFF's new brief, you'll get a good idea of what the argument is in terms of whether it counts when a robot looks at it. And actually the title of the paper is When Robot Eyes Are Watching. And so I think this question of at what point do we draw the line on the privacy invasion? Is it when the bits go in the box? Is it when the box stores the bits? Is it when the box sends the bits to the NSA? Is it when those bits are rendered into a human intelligible form? Is it when a human actually reads them? Is it when a human reads them and prepares them for an analyst to actually pay attention to them? And how you draw that line is really important. I would say that, think back to that Simpsons clip, and you have all these NSA functionaries listening to all these really intimate things. And you know what they looked like? They looked bored. Because if you were actually doing this with human beings and trying to pay attention to all this stuff, You'd just be listening to communication after communication. You wouldn't get titillated by it, like your doctor who's seen everybody's bits, like, you know, other bits, not the digital bits. You know, you're going to hear so much stuff through the day. You're going to have forgotten most of it by the time you leave for the day. Yet everyone would say, if you had a human being listening to those conversations, that would be a search, that would be a seizure, that would be an interception or an electronic surveillance. So the question becomes, how is it different? How is it less worse if we automate that? And I would actually say that if you're automating it, you're making it that much worse, because that army of people that you could never afford to listen to everybody, you now have it, except it's an army of robots. Ooh, that's a good question.
Can you repeat the question, Kevin?
Yeah, no, the question was, what about the hash of the bits? So there is one theory. Actually, the person who wrote a really good article on this is a gentleman named Richard Salgado, formerly DOJ CSIPS, Computer Crime and Intellectual Property Section, then at Yahoo, and now Chief Law Enforcement Dude at Google, which actually takes, in general, very strong positions on this stuff. He wrote a paper analogizing the searching of a data stream or a computer for hashes of known child porn. He analogized that to dog sniffs and suggested that a search of a data stream or a drive for hashes of child porn would be analogous to a dog sniff, because similarly it would only detect that contraband. And in fact, we just saw this in the news just in this past week when it was revealed, not revealed, I mean we knew this was happening, that Google does in fact use, as do other cloud companies, and I fear some of the ISPs, use a database of hashes of images that the NCMEC, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, has concluded are child porn. I expect most of those images are child porn. However, it is of concern, speaking generally, that a quasi-governmental entity is providing to private actors a list of expression, like its photos, that they believe are illegal and not protected by the First Amendment, but that no court has adjudicated to be illegal and unprotected by the First Amendment, and that these providers of our communication services are voluntarily scanning for that and then reporting that.
So I think there's a legally significant difference between searching streams of communications for selectors that apply to particular people that you have determined through some process are lawfully under surveillance, and looking for hashes of images or content of communications, because this is an area where Kevin and I would agree, because I actually think that that is a search, because you are in fact trying to find out if every one of those communications contains this particular content, as opposed to trying to pick out which communication belongs to this individual that I have decided I'm going to surveil. But it's a fascinating question, because one difference between the hash search and the dog sniff is that actually the hash search is probably a lot more accurate than the dog sniff. I mean, that was one of the big problems with the dog sniff case, is that it assumed the dog was 100% accurate and only alerted when there was contraband, which of course is not true.
And wait, sorry, because we're going to run out of time. I just want to say we'll take questions at the end, but this issue is just incredibly essential, because if all of our lives are now digital, are we going to have sort of this collected all reality of both local law enforcement and national security, and then the Fourth Amendment doesn't apply till the very end when there's probable cause to do something, so it completely circumvents the Fourth Amendment potentially. So this is just a really essential question, not just with physical surveillance in terms of everything from dog sniffs to stingrays, but electronic surveillance. And so this is something maybe we should have a whole panel on it at another DEF CON.
Would there be interest in that?
We were going to show one more clip for Enemy of the State. Do you think we have time to show the last
We do,
clip?
yeah, one more
okay.
clip.
We'll do one more clip for Enemy of the State, and then we're going to move on to talking about change and solutions. So just to remember, this is Enemy of the State pre-9/11. Uh-oh, sorry about that.
Oh,
what is going on?
Well,
We don't show the... I know.
I was going to say that there is a little bit of a cult.
Okay, here we go.
I'll say.
Come on. Come on, now look at that ball. All right. Come on, get that ball.
There's no problem with that.
Oh, God damn it.
Happens, let me know.
What the hell are you doing here? This is not the office. This is my private time.
5 minutes.
No. I said no Tuesday. I said no last week. I'm going to keep saying no until you hear me.
5 minutes, Mr. Chairman. That's all I ask, 5 minutes. Want some coffee?
No, I don't want any coffee. I want to play with my dog.
Look, I'm not asking you to vote for it. I know you can. Just release your people. Let them go the way they want.
Telecommunications Security and Privacy Act. Invasion of privacy is more like it. You read the Post? This bill is not the first step to the surveillance society. It is the surveillance society.
Liberal hysteria.
Oh, listen, I'm not going to sit in Congress and pass a law that lets the government point a camera and a microphone at anything they damn well please.
Phil? Look, I don't care who bangs who, what cabinet officers get stoned, but this is the richest, most powerful nation on earth, and therefore the most hated. And you and I know what the average citizen does not, that we are at war 24 hours of every day.
Yeah.
Do I have to itemize the number of American lives we've saved in the past 12 months alone with judicious use of surveillance intelligence?
Thomas, cut the crap. I've got 3 major employers in the Syracuse area alone who are going to get just killed by this bill.
I promise to get you funds equal to or greater than whatever those companies gave your last campaign.
I'm not talking about campaign contributions, damn it. I'm talking about my constituents being out of work. Jesus, man, wake up. National security isn't the only thing going on in this country. This conversation is over.
Well, there goes the Fourth Amendment. What's left of it?
Hey, Maria.
Hello, Mr. Bobby.
Don't you honestly doubt that the average citizen...
Hey, you're about a bark and a half from being homeless.
Baby, listen to this fascist gas bag.
And freedom have always existed in a very precarious balance, and when buildings start blowing up, people's priorities tend to change.
She's got a point there, sweetie.
Bobby.
I mean, who is this idiot?
He is talking about ending personal privacy. Do you want your phone tapped?
I'm not planning on blowing up the country.
Well, how do we know until we've heard all your dirty little secrets?
You're just gonna have to trust me.
Oh, I know. We'll just tap the criminals. We won't suspend the civil rights of the good people.
Right.
Then who decides which is which?
I think you should.
You know, Bobby, I think you should take this more seriously.
Honey, I think you're taking it seriously enough for both of us and half the people on the block.
Tens of millions of foreign nationals living within our borders, and many of these people consider the United States their enemy, and they see acts of terrorism.
So I love this clip also because the wife plays an ACLU lawyer in this movie, so especially particularly close to my heart. But definitely some similar phrases going on in this movie than we've heard since 9/11.
Yeah, one bit of context. That first scene, that is the NSA director trying to convince the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee to support their bill. It's the first scene of the movie, and what happens at the end of it is that the NSA assassinates the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee. I don't think the NSA would do that. As it's a bit out there, but I don't know.
Yeah. So the NSA doesn't engage in those kinds of operations.
That would be CIA.
There are other parts of the government that do that. They would object very strongly to the NSA's turf grabbing if the NSA tried to do assassination.
But obviously the similarities to the Patriot Act, to the FISA Amendments Act, and now we see sort of post-Snowden, some moving back from that, some real movement in D.C. to reinsert some important safeguards. And so we want to end sort of on a note of what we see moving and optimism about what we see potentially happening to address some of what has occurred since 9/11, the concerns that many civil libertarians and many members of the public have had just about overreach, about abuse, about lack of safeguards, about lack of check and balances.
Yeah, so there is this bill, the USA Freedom Act, that was really great, and then it was really awful, and now it's better, but not awesome, but still good enough to actually change the law in some really good ways, and we're hoping that we can try and move it before the election when Congress comes back in September. But I just wanted to flag another thing that I think of when I watch this clip, which is, and that harkens back to the paper we wrote last week, but also to, I think, Chris Soghoian's talk yesterday, if you saw it, which is too often the debate here has boiled down to a pretty simplistic argument about security or purported security benefit and cost to privacy and civil liberties, when really we're not interrogating the benefits nearly enough, and we're not actually looking broadly enough at all the various costs, not just to privacy and civil liberties, but at first the literal cost of how much money is spent on this stuff, which this black budget is huge, but the cost to our industry now that it's known, the cost to internet security, the cost to foreign relations, the cost to our internet freedom agenda around the world, the cost to our credibility. We need to have a more nuanced conversation of the pros and cons here.
And some of those costs are, I think, part of the reason why President Obama, issued this PPD 28, which makes some pretty modest reforms, but it conceptually was a big leap for the intelligence community, because for the first time, pretty much ever, this presidential directive acknowledges the rights and interests beyond the United States citizens, to include foreign citizens as well. And part of the reason for that, I'd like to think it's just because it's the right thing to do, but I think part of the reason for that is because of pressure from the technology industry that says, hey, when you guys go out there and say we've got these protections for U.S. citizens, that doesn't really help us very much in the global marketplace. These revelations are extremely damaging to the U.S. position as a technology leader, and so it's been my strong view that one consequence of the recent controversy will be and should be increased understanding that we need to have privacy protections for everyone and not just for Americans.
And also seeing members of Congress directly challenging the intelligence community, as we saw in this clip, the director of the NSA saying, do I need to recount all the ways that this has been useful to us in addressing terrorism? Yes, and we see now real challenges by members of Congress saying, no, like Senator Wyden, saying, no, I don't see any evidence that this has led to information that we couldn't have obtained in far less intrusive and constitutional ways. And so not just taking at face value the issues that this is necessary or it's necessary to be done in these invasive and unconstitutional ways. And I think that that's a huge shift in thinking, and something that is really important for the debate going forward. So I want to be mindful of our time, of all of you in the audience, of my fellow panelists. I want to thank you guys for coming on Saturday night. And please follow us, get engaged in the work that each of our organizations are doing, and thank you very much. We hope to see you next year at TEF CON.